Hey guys, here's another update from the Midi 80 sound and interface card for the TRS-80. If you don't know what Midi 80 is, so this is the extension card sitting on my TRS-80 Model 3 here. It's a Midi sound and Midi interface card. It's powered by this Blue Pill STM32 Cortex ARM microcontroller, right? And you can use it as a general Midi sound card for the TRS-80. So if you plug a Wave Blaster compatible module in there, such as the S2 or the E-Wave or the X2GS, right? So there are multiple options you can purchase from Zerda shop in Belgium. Then you can use this as a general Midi sound card. But you don't even need this module, right? The Wave Blaster sound module, but you could also simply plug an external general Midi expander into the MIDI out DIN socket here, and then use this as a sound module, sound card for your TRS-80. And we also have MIDI in, right? So eventually we will turn this into a full-blown MIDI tracker for the TRS-80. By now we have a drum pattern sequencer, which I demonstrated in the previous video, right? So you can graphically create drum patterns using your TRS-80 keyboard and the S2 or an external MIDI module. So next I'll add some MIDI tracking capabilities there as well. And I also demonstrated playback of general MIDI sounds, GM MIDI sounds from TRS-80 memory over the S2 or and Roland MT32, a couple of songs I demonstrated in previous videos. But today I want to show you something new we have been developing, and let's see that I can bring my camera back and focus here, the TRS-80 back in focus, so you can see that. And I'm very fortunate to have George Phillips, the developer of TRS-80 GP, one of the really great emulators for the TRS-80 line of microcomputers, as well as the developer of the Zmac Z80 development system, right? So it's an assembler and debugger and all that. And I'm using his toolset Zmac to develop the software here that I'm demonstrating. And he also wrote part of the program that I'm demonstrating, namely the keyboard decoding routines are from a project of his where he uses the TRS-80 keyboard to play the orchestra sound card, right, in a very similar fashion. So, by the way, MIDI 80 and the orchestra sound card are compatible with each other, right? So you can plug this onto the MIDI 80, and then you can use George Phillips MIDI orchestra organ to play the orchestra sound card over MIDI, over MIDI 80, over the MIDI DIN input. But here, and he also wrote a program where you can play interactively the orchestra sound card over the TRS-80 keyboard, and the keyboard decoding matrix decoding routines that he used there are kind of ingenious because they utilize self-modifying code basically for the key on, key off dispatching handlers, right? And I'm using his code here for the MIDI 80 synthesizer program that I'm now going to demonstrate. So in a sense, this is joint work with George Phillips. And he also created this nice ASCII art, which we are seeing at the beginning here. So let's fire up the program. So George Phillips created all this ASCII art as part of his documentation for the orchestra organ that program that he created. So what can we do with this? So we have two rows of keys. And you can hear it's even polyphonic, right? And the sound is of course coming from the MIDI 80. You hear whenever I press keys we are getting activity LEDs blinking there. and we also have the upper keys available. So with the upper keys, and here we already see one little problem, right? So this is that there is ghosting happening, so you're getting phantom key presses based on how the matrix decoding is implemented on the TRS-80. So certain chords you won't be able to play because you're getting these phantom key presses. There's one, right? So those have to be avoided. There's I'm not sure yet what to do about it. If there can be anything done about it, I'm not sure. So so we can play these two rows of keys together, right? Then we can also change the octaves individually. So using A and F, we can change the lower row octaves. And you see the settings for lower and higher keys, rows of keys here, right? So for example, the first hex byte printed here is the octave offset. So whenever I press A, it decrements by 12, right? Or C, basically hex, right? And if I press F, then it increments by 12. And the same for the upper keys. For this I use 1 and 4. And for example, you could then set up the lower row for your bass. Obviously that's piano now, but you can also change the instruments now. So say you wanted a bass sound. What you do is you basically have 16 MIDI channels, right? And for each of the rows, upper and lower, you can assign the MIDI channel which is being used for this row of keys. And the MIDI channel is shown here as the second hex byte. And note that when I push the space button, because I didn't have enough keys, you have to select whether you want to use the function or the control keys for setting these values, either on the lower row of keys, right, or on the upper row of keys. So you can see that this selection here changes then. So this is now the lower row of keys, and you see that the current MIDI channel is 0, and the MIDI instrument that it's playing on this channel is 0, and this is the volume. So using Enter, I can toggle through the 16 channels which are available from 0 to F, and the instruments are pre-selected, right? So each channel remembers its selected instrument, and they are just identical to the channel number currently, but I can change those now, right? And if you go to channel A, for example, oh actually it's 9, then you know it's the drum channel, right? And you know, then you can, for example, now go to channel 0, use the piano, or you can go to channel 1 and maybe you want to change this to a bass sound. And so you got to look up the instrument numbers from the general MIDI standard. You can find this on Wikipedia, there's a nice list. And bass sounds, for example, start at 20, I think. So we can now increment the instrument number, and it's being stored with the channel for this lower row of keys. So in order to change the instrument now, we are using left and right arrow keys, right? It's also explained here. You can tell that this is now incrementing here. Let's go to 20, 21 electric guitars. I think those are bass sounds. Now you could play the bass on the lower. Yeah, and sometimes I'm still getting some hung notes. Gotta work on that still. So, yeah, and you can also change the volume here, which is the last hex byte you see here. And to change the volume, you just use the not left and right, but up and down. And it wraps around, right? So now I'm at volume 10. Back to 127, 7F is the highest. And then you can increment the volume. Yeah, so this is how this works. I hope you have fun with that and just, explore all the different instruments which are there in the general MIDI standards and on the S2 or your sound module. Just kind of neat just to play around with this and see all the crazy stuff that is there, even sound effects.